Hi there and welcome to the Repair Studio. Now today I thought we could do a little bit of painting on this beautiful femelle rose. I think it's a tray of some sort. Lovely mandarin detail there, birds, all sorts, and it's just very pretty. But it has had some chips in which I have fixed, but there are some missing pieces, as you can see here, which could just do with a little bit of filling in with some paint. Now I have, if I can show you at the back here, you can barely see it, there was a huge big piece missing here, which I did fill with Milliput, sanded, and I did paint in with a airbrush. You can see on the other side the remnants from the airbrush, which I will cover airbrushing in a few videos time, so please subscribe so you know when that's when I upload that. So for today we're going to do just a little bit of painting and the products I use and how I would use them. First of all, clean surface, clean hands, something on your work surface so you don't get any paint or any product on your work surfaces, some kitchen roll or an old towel. I've got some Rustin's ceramic glaze here. Now what I do with the ceramic glaze, because it does harden very quickly, is I put it just a little bit into a jar. So then the jar, it doesn't matter if that dries out, and this keeps this nice and fresh rather than opening the lid and getting air into it. Also need some brushes. Flat brush is really useful for the final glaze to just smooth over, and then some brushes of various sizes. Also paint. Now I tend to use powder pigments, which I buy from either Amazon, but these ones I did get, I must admit, from Green and Stone in London. They're quite expensive, but they would last you literally a lifetime. A little goes a long way. But also, which I highly recommend, is the Winsor & Newton acrylics, and they're easy to go through an airbrush and they're easy to mix. They don't get too gloopy. You haven't got any little bits in there. Great for beginners, to be honest. So, and you can mix them both together. And then my one colour which I can never go without, and that's the yellow ochre. Always good, it sort of just deadens the colour slightly. Right, so starting on this little tray here, I think I'd like to first of all go with a little bit of the pink. You see there's just a little bit, one or two little bits missing. I don't want to overdo it, just do a little bit. So I've got a cup of water here and also a white plate where I can mix. If you have white rather than anything patterned, you can actually see what you're doing. And then some spare kitchen roll just to wipe the brushes. Now it's quite small, so I probably have a brush, say this size for mixing, and then I would use a very small brush, just painting in. Could go even smaller if I really wanted to, something like that, very fine. So I'd probably use those three brushes to begin with. So what I would do is I could take my plate first, and let's mix some of the pink. So to make the pink, I will use some of this red here, Red Lake. I mean, to be honest, it's all trial and error, and you just got to keep practicing and practicing, and obviously every colour tone is different. So a little bit of water, shall I use a larger one, with the brush, and then I'll just take a tiny bit of the colour, the pigment. First of all, I just put a bit on the side because you can always go back to that, and then mix a bit with the water. So we start to get a colour there. And then I would get some Rustin's ceramic glaze and just add a tiny bit to it just to help it set in. Let's use another brush there. So again, I would just take a big dollop of this and I would put it onto the plate, because we can go back to that, and then just rinse your brush out straight away. Place this on so it doesn't dry out. Now I can see with this colour, it's the pink, it's quite a sort of mauvey pink, and that's quite, as you can see, quite a reddy burgundy pink. But can you see here, you've got lots of little bits. You really have to mix this in well, whereas opposed to the acrylic, you wouldn't have to do that, it would be straight away. So because it's slightly mauvey, I can see it's probably got a hint of blue in there. So if I guess just a tiny bit of blue, and again, this is where you start mixing and matching. I think we'll probably just do the pink, and yeah, we'll see how we get on today. Right, obviously too much. We'll just take a bit off, add a bit of the rustins, and then start mixing that colour. Well, that's looking better. Maybe in a tiny more blue, bit of blue, and you can just start mixing it all together. Get some more rustins in there, and that's gone too dark now. Can you see? Add a bit of water, a bit more red, and it's just dipping in and out, trial and error. Right, now what's that like? That's quite close actually, so let's give that a go. You can always wipe it off if it's not the right tone. So if you can see here, it's just missing a little bit there. So if I just add in very carefully, it's not a block colour, but can you see it's now blended? Now this bit here is a bit of where the blue would go, but I can just see a little bit there. That's now blending in. Then I can see a bit here is missing, so just, now I'm using a larger brush actually, which is fine, but obviously if you're doing real tight work, it's very, you could add in. That is white, but I think that's meant to, actually maybe just give it a little tone there, just a little bit. It's going more there. What I'll do with that, I don't want to make it too block, so I would just probably mix more water, have it slightly more watery on that part. I don't know if you can see here. So a little bit of the glaze, make it watery. So you can see here it's white, but everything else has just got a hint of a tone. So if you mix some water, make it just almost so translucent. That's better. That's it. It just takes off that white, but you've still got some of the white coming through, but it's just blended it in. Now another part of the pink I can see here is here. It's missing a bit, and I've got some missing here. So we'll finish those off. Just up with some, get rid of that, and then add a bit of this colour here, which we've already, sorry, let me sort of show you here. Right, so got a bit here, let's see, it's quite watery actually, so again I would probably add in, let's have a look here. It's a bit watery, again if you can just add in just a bit of water, so it's just a hint of a glaze, you can see, rather than a solid paint. Let's put that down there for now. Right, so let's just do that and see how that looks. Just on there, as I say, I don't want it to be a block colour, I just need it just like that. That's looking good. You can always dry and take away. Say, I don't want it to be solid. There's a bit of a line there, but I'll let that just dry for a second. Maybe add in, again, trial and error, adding a bit more, and then just gently apply that. That's it. Right, so now we've got this piece here, can you see? Some just here, it's all missing. So again, looks slightly darker, so I would add maybe a little bit more dark to that. You can see it's drying already, that's fine. And then I would just lightly paint that in. Now I'm just double checking, it's got a bit here is missing. There. Again, I don't want to be, actually I might use a different brush for that. Use smaller brush. If it's something that's really quite small and intricate. So I'll just use a smaller brush there and just paint. That's it, him in there. Now, looking around, what else can I see? Now we've done a bit here. It could also, I still feel it could do with a little bit more colour there actually. So let us just wipe a bit of that. This is just the playing parts, which I love. And adding bits and pieces. So you can see it there. That's it. Bits and pieces to colour. Let's make it slightly more intense. Adding to have a practice on there. Doesn't need too much, but just maybe a little bit more colour there. Oh, that's better. Blend them in. Can you see? You can see they're all slightly washy, so I don't want to overdo it. Maybe just do a bit more on that. There. There we go. Right, now I think we're kind of there on the pink. Can't see any more. Might be now that's dried, maybe just do a tiny little bit more on the colour there. I mean, I could be here playing all day with this. It's quite fun. Maybe just double check. So there. Yeah. Maybe just a tiny bit more tone on there. Because that's definitely darker. There we go. Right, so I think what we'll do now, what really stands out on me with this is this big bit of orange. So I think I'm going to just fill in those orange pieces now. And then I think that will be it for today. Otherwise, we'll see how we get on. So with the orange, wash our brushes down. Now it's more like an orangey brown, so I would probably go for this colour, which is, oh, it doesn't actually say, but there are many on the market. So let's go for a dab of orange. Actually, let's get some ceramic glaze first. Just to put a tiny bit of ceramic glaze, and then just put a dollop on the plate so it's all ready for us. And then a little bit of water. And then I would take a little bit of this colour. Let's just get a little bit. Could use a new plate for this. Needs deadening slightly, a bit of brown. It's good colour, my favourite, yellow ochre. Suits different brush. Excuse me. Right, so we've got some of that yellow ochre there as well. Right, so let's mix a tiny bit of that with that, see what happens. Now that's pretty good. You get used to the colours after a while and say what and what doesn't work. And that's looking quite good. What you can do with these colours is you can always add a little bit, you can always try a bit on the plate, and you can always wipe it down. Might have a little bit darker, but should we try that? Right, so I could try it on here first. We've got a little bit here, just a little dab on there. It's still a bit light, but it's not too bad. Maybe just add a tiny bit of a brown. Here I've got raw umber. It's a very useful colour. And then just, you know, and I shouldn't be dipping it in with another, but it is quite dark, so that's fine. Add a bit of raw umber in there just to slightly make it darker. And all you do is keep doing this, and just while you're painting. Right, so let's go for that. Let's see. I'm using a larger brush here because it's quite big streaks. It's not too bad. You can always build up. I'll need another colour on there, another coat, but that would just, and another bit on there. You see it's still a bit light, but that's good for a first base. Just paint that very carefully, just by a head. So it's starting to build up the colour there. It's a warm day today, so everything's drying, and because it's just quite a thin coat, it will dry quite quickly. So what I'll do is let's get some more. I might make it again a tiny bit darker, again with the umbre. A little bit too much, but just add a little bit more. Sorry, dog barking. Right, I'm adding a little bit of the glaze. Add a bit more there. It's just, again, trial and error. Now that looks quite, let's look a bit brown. Actually, that's quite a good colour. Let's give that a go. Ideally, you would leave that to dry for a few more minutes, but just sort of demonstrating and showing. Shush! Dogs. Ah, that's it. A bit on there. It's deadening. It's maybe slightly too dead. Add a tiny bit more orange, and then I think that will be done on that colour. That's gone a bit. Maybe a bit more of this. Again, trial error. Just keep. Ah, that's a really good colour there. And then add a bit of the ceramic glaze. Right, we'll do this and then I'll show you what to do on the final glaze. So on this bit here, well, let's just go through it again. You don't want to, when you do colour in something, you don't want to do the whole line, because you know you're then going over what's original. It's always good to just do what needs to be done. It's a very good tip. So it's just a bit there. That's it. And one last bit here it was, just by a hair. Maybe I can just see a bit there is missing as well, so I'd quite like to sharpen that edge off. Right, now I'm quite pleased with that. That's nice little bits there from wear and tear over years. I mean, this has got to be at least 150 years old. So there we go. So it's starting to come along. Next colour I will then do would be the blue. We've got some pale blue there, another blue there, and some green, which I'll probably do on the next lesson. So, and then I think what I'll do now, because this colour is dried, the pink colour, I'll just show you what I would do once I painted a colour in, and that's to do the final glaze. Make sure that your brushes, by the way, are always clean, always dry, otherwise they do get ruined. Right, so for the final glaze, for instance, I would then use a very large flat brush. I mean, obviously this is quite big, this is small, delicate work, so you probably don't need a brush as big as this actually. Maybe something smaller, something like this larger paint, sable brush, but not as large as the flat. Make sure it's dry. Then you would just take a tiny bit of the rustings. You don't need very much. I like to put it on a plate because you don't want to end up with any big drips. And then where you've worked, for instance, we've done this part here, you just want to put a tiny bit of the glaze on the top. What this does, it blends it all in, it shines it up, and it really does. You really can't tell which is the original and which isn't. I've already done on here, but you can go over what's already been done, to be honest, when it's a glaze. Where else did we go? Can't remember. Can't remember what else we did. It's all kind of good. It was mainly there, wasn't it? There. I think we just did a little bit of tarting up, didn't we, on there? If you let it dry too much, too quickly, the glaze, you'd end up getting lines from the paintbrush. So you want to be quite quick with it. Just do a little bit. So there we go. It's coming together. We've done the pink bits. We've done these bits along here now. Still leaving it true to itself, just doing bits and pieces. And what I'll do is in the next tutorial is I think we will do the blues and the green, and yeah, and we'll see how that goes on. Now I'm going to start uploading every Sunday and Wednesday, so please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when I'm uploading. And yeah, so if there's any questions you'd like to ask or anything else you'd like me to do, obviously we're going to be going and covering lots of things, please leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please subscribe, please like, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.